Legacy Motor Club could be looking to buy or merge with the Haas factory team in 2026, depending on what happens with the lawsuit. And Corey Day may be full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2026 with Hendrick, while Connor Zilch may be full-time in the Cup Series with Trackhouse Racing as expected. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and Motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just show them straight into them. The paint schemes we're taking a look at are Justin Haley and Michael McDowell's 2025 Fly Alliance schemes that we'll see in a couple races, I believe, at Daytona and Las Vegas Motor Speedway as well. I gotta say, both do look really solid. I like the look of the colors on them. They do look pretty cool and really exciting and great to see. The Fly Alliance will be stepping up to the plate and sponsor both these guys with Spire. Pretty good to see a new sponsor in the sport. Pretty awesome stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Watkins Glen truck race as they have a title sponsor for the event. The title sponsor is going to be the Mission 176 at the Glen. It was also confirmed as well that Todd Bodine will be the Grand Marshal for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Watkins Glen as well. Mission 176 has sponsored the ARCA race in the past, so Mission Foods is stepping up to the plate. I think they sponsored a Truck Series race a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when they ran here back in 21, I'm pretty sure. So pretty cool to see them stepping up to the plate and sponsoring Watkins Glen Truck Series race, and pretty exciting also to see that that Todd Bodine is working in the sport once again and being the Grand Marshal for the Truck Series race. Really cool stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. As was reported by the NASCAR Insights account after the Cup Series race concluded from Iowa Speedway, that RFK Racing had two cars finish inside the top 5 at Iowa Speedway. That being, of course, Brad Keselowski finished 3rd and Ryan Prix finished in 5th. That is the first time since Texas and Kansas in 2012 where two RFK Racing cars finished in the top 5 in back-to-back races. RFK Racing has been showing a lot of pace and a lot of speed throughout 2025, and I want to give a shout out to Brad Keselowski because Brad Keselowski has been really turning the corner over the last 11 races especially. He's had 4 top 5s and 7 top 10s, and he's jumped up to 19th in the regular season standings. So to see this team continue to improve, I think that's really awesome to see. Good to see two cars finish inside the top 5. Pretty exciting stuff, and good to see them have success once again as they did many, many years ago. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're unfortunately taking this episode to a sour note. As it was sadly announced earlier today that Walker Evans has unfortunately passed away at the age of 86 years old. Walker Evans, for those who don't know, owned a team in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in the early days of the sport. He competed in multiple Craftsman Truck Series races as well, and he also won 5 Baja 1000s on off-road, which is very difficult to win the Baja 1000. My thoughts and prayers go out to the Evans family during this time. Walker was a legend of the off-road scene and a Baja scene and all that stuff. My thoughts and prayers do go out to the Evans family currently at the moment. Walker Evans was 86 years old. Unfortunate news today in the motorsports world to see that Walker Evans has unfortunately passed away. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stuart Fzen. As Stuart Fzen and his wife Jessica did confirm that Stuart Fzen underwent surgery over the week, and surgery went very, very well, and now they are in the recovery process. This is really, really good news to hear. We all know that Stuart Fzen was involved in a very scary and very dangerous crash in a big block modified event on Monday night. He flipped multiple times, ricocheted off the outside wall, then a car that was coming at full speed unfortunately ran into Stuart Fzen. We're continuing to pray for Stuart Fzen, and now the big thing is to go through the recovery process at this time. Hopefully he can recover very soon and get back out on the racetrack. It's probably going to take some time for him to get back out on the racetrack, but nonetheless, this is really, really good news here, and I'm very happy to see that Stuart Fzen underwent successful surgery. Hope he can recover very soon and get back out to the racetrack very soon. Hopefully he does recover here very, very soon. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Hungarian Grand Prix. Before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Iowa Speedway, you had the Hungarian Grand Prix going on. And this race would be dominated by a couple guys. It would be dominated by Charles Leclerc, who dominated the early portion of this race. Unfortunately, strategy really came into play. There would be no safety cars in the event. And because of strategy being very difficult to pass in Hungary, Lando Norris is able to get a really big advantage at the end and got the lead because he basically made a had one stop early in the middle portion of the race, but they had the hard tires. But Oscar Piastri was coming up and chasing him down. But because he didn't have a big enough gap to get there, he ran out of time to get by him at the end, and Lando Norris held off a hard-charging Oscar Piastri to pick up, I believe, his 5th Formula One win of 2025, close the gap on a championship, and I think like his 9th or 10th career Formula One win as well. Lando Norris, I think, is the only guy that can beat Oscar Piastri currently at the moment for the championship. He's going to have a lot of momentum going into the break, which I think that's something that you want, is a lot of momentum. Congratulations to him on picking up the win. A well-earned and well-deserved victory in the Hungarian Grand Prix for Lando. I know there's strategy to play to get in the make him become a factor in the event, but very good to see him go out there and win the Hungarian Grand Prix. A well-earned and well-deserved win for him. Good to see him get that done. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chris Wright. Now, if you watch an ARCA race from this past weekend at Iowa Speedway, which we'll talk about here in just a short little bit, you saw the incident between Chris Wright. So Chris Wright, we all know, is no longer with ARCA Motorsports currently at the moment, as that team has unfortunately shut down and has had to be relegated to running an ARCA events with Hendrick Motorsports in a couple events. And during the early portion of the race, Chris Wright was involved in a crash. He wasn't really having the best day to begin with, running around 8th or 9th, getting outperformed by both his teammates. He went up the racetrack, tried to clear himself in front of Sam Corey, and basically ended up wrecking himself into the outside wall, destroying the car. Now, last year, the one series where Chris Wright didn't really cause any crashes, for the most part, was ARCA. Well, it seems like he wants to cause another wreck, unfortunately, in ARCA. Look, I have been very hard on Chris Wright because it frustrates me that this guy, who has not been very, very good in NASCAR motorsports in general, keeps getting these rides and keeps getting these opportunities, and every time he gets behind the wheel, he absolutely squanders it and does a horrendous and not a very, very good job. And this is another situation, another case of that, because I really don't think he deserved the chance and opportunity to race in this ARCA event in Iowa, because I think there's other guys who may not bring the sponsorship and funding, but I think are certainly better than Chris Wright at this point. And the fact he tried to clear himself up and think that he was clear, when you can clearly see here, no pun intended, that he was not clear, it blows my mind that this guy continues to get rides and opportunities in the sport. I just don't get what you're doing at this point right now, because you're causing an incident, you're taking out a car that doesn't need to be there. I get that the Venturini Motorsports team is no longer going to be around at the end of this year as they're integrating over to the Nitro Motorsports team going into next season, but it's just funny to me that Chris Wright goes down to ARCA, a series where he didn't get involved in any crash or incidents last year, and cause another crash and cause a lot of damage for the Nitro Motorsports team. Crazy to see him involved in another incident and another crash. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the ARCA race from Iowa. Now, we've already talked about the incident with Chris Wright, but let's talk about the race itself. So once again, like it's been throughout the majority of the season, there were two cars that were up front throughout the whole entire event. That is Brendan Butterbean Queen, who's been really good on the bigger ovals this year, and Brent Cruz has picked up 2 or 3 wins so far in ARCA in 2025. Now, if you got the lead on the restarts, you were going to have the track position where we're going to be able to hold on, because it was very, very tough and very difficult to pass. It looked like Brent Cruz at times was a little bit quicker than Brendan Butterbean Queen, but with how good Brendan has been throughout this year and good at holding track position throughout the season so far, Brendan was able to hold off a hard-charging Brent Cruz and basically picked up the win. Traffic really became a factor, but no one could get to Brendan as he would come off the corner and pick up his 5th win of 2025 and his first short track win of the season. Brendan, of course, leads the points currently at the moment, has been having a really strong and great season, especially on the bigger ovals this year. So to see him go out there win a short track is a really big deal. I expect Brendan to be a big factor to win the championship by the end of the year, but it's a step in the right direction. We've been seeing that car have really good speed. The Pinnacle Racing Group team, of course, won last year with Connor Zilch. We're going to talk about quite a bit here in just a short little bit, but nonetheless, congratulations to Brendan Butterbean Queen on picking up the win at Iowa. It was a well-earned and well-deserved victory to get that done, holding up a hard-charging Brent Cruz, some decent racing and points throughout the event as well. Good to see him go out there and pick up the win. Congratulations to him on winning the ARCA race at Iowa, a well-earned win for him in the event, and getting Pinnacle Racing Group another win and another victory as well. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NBC Sports. As was reported by Adam Stern on Friday late afternoon, the NBC Sports will not show full-screen commercials at Daytona and Talladega throughout the remainder of this year, just like they did in 2024. I think this is a really good executive decision to not show full screen commercials for Daytona and Talladega. But I gotta say, it kind of felt not that good seeing full screen commercials for the Cup Series races on USA today. And I get that on the cable side of things, that they're probably going to show more full screen commercials in some areas, but also we're basically back on television. And we've seen TNT do a much better job integrating side-by-side commercials. And we've seen, of course, other networks kind of integrate them, like Amazon Prime, for example, did an amazing job. You never miss a moment of the race. It kind of didn't feel really good to see in the full screen commercials during the Cup Series race today at Iowa Speedway. I think that they've got to get a little more updated at that point. But I'm glad to see there won't be any full screen commercials at Daytona and Talladega, because I think especially for those two races, even though they've been kind of become parades at this point and basically very difficult to pass in any way, shape, or form, I still think it is very, very important that you basically have no full screen commercials for these events. So I think that's at least a little bit of a step in the right direction. But I wish that there was a way we could have no full screen commercials for any of the races, and it's not just a Cup Series thing. This should be for the Xfinity and the Truck Series as well, in my opinion, because I think if you don't have full screen commercials at all, you're not missing any of the action. Xfinity's done a pretty good job integrating that throughout the year so far, and I think that's something that they should absolutely do, because I think that'd be the best way to go when it comes to that kind of stuff. I really hope that happens, and I really hope we don't see any full screen commercials going forward in the future, but I think it's a step in the right direction for NBC and USA as well. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR 25, as there has continued to be more news around NASCAR 25 that has been revealed over the course of the last couple days. So on Friday, it was announced that the Xfinity Series lineups have been officially revealed. Some things you will notice: Casey Kane is unfortunately not in the game. The 33 car is not showing up, and the 17 HendrickCars.com Chevrolet also is not in the game. But there are some notable drivers that will be in this game. Shane Van Gisbergen, who's been driving the number 9 car this year. I believe also Ross Chastain will be in the game as well, who's driven the 9. And Eric Almirola, who's been driving the 19 car in quite a few races this season, he also will be in this game as well. The Xfinity lineup is probably going to have around 40 to 42 cars. They're going to have more entries. I have to think there'll be drivers changing throughout certain events they enter, like the road courses, for example. For Xfinity, you're probably going to see SVG in the 9, as they already won a race so far this year, that of course being at Chicago. Meanwhile, one other thing that was confirmed according to Mike Straw, setups was one thing they talked about, and it seems like, according to what Mike Straw says, he said a lot of fans are probably going to be happy with some of the news that is coming, which makes me very, very excited as well, because for NASCAR 25, there's a lot of unknowns about how the game is going to be, and I think we have to have realistic expectations. I do understand why some fans have PTSD around NASCAR 25, considering how NASCAR 21 Ignition rolled out. There was a lot of hype around that game, and then, of course, the game turned into a complete disaster, and it was a dumpster fire, just like the MLB Speedway Classic was yesterday, but I digress. But I will say, when it comes to NASCAR 25, I think there's definitely some exciting stuff around that coming for sure, and I do think the gameplay trailer will be coming out in the next couple weeks, which I think that's going to be really cool to see. So I think there's definitely some exciting stuff around NASCAR 25 coming really soon, but I do love the Xfinity lineups that they're officially finalized and revealed. The Cup lineups I expect to come at some point in the coming days. It could come by the end of today at this rate. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but good to see that we're starting to get more information on NASCAR 25, and I really hope all the information can be good in regards to NASCAR 25 going forward and in the not-so-distant future. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Christopher Bell. As it was announced on Saturday afternoon that Christopher Bell will drive the number 52 for Fzen Racing in the Craftsman Truck Series this weekend at Watkins Glen. This, I believe, will be the first time that Christopher Bell has competed in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2025. I think he made a couple starts last year in 2024. I think he drove for Hattori a couple years back, I'm pretty sure as well. And he also made a couple starts last year in the one truck for Tricon Garage, and had some pretty decent pace and speed. The reason he's in that truck is because, of course, we know that Stuart Fzen will not be behind the wheel. He did confirm in the statement as well they're going to be having more drivers behind the wheel of the truck throughout the remainder of the 2025 season. I would expect some guys that are probably upcoming to get a chance and opportunity. We could also see Josh Williams behind the wheel at this point, but they will compete for the Owners' Championship. I think Christopher Bell could be a sleeper for the win, but I don't know how good that truck is going to be because I think the Hallmark Fzen team has shown some decent pace this year. I mean, you look at how good they were at a race like Michigan where they picked up the win and they had some pretty good speed, but of course they got a disqualification not too long ago. But I'm going to be very interested to see who is behind the wheel of the number 52 truck throughout the remainder of the year and the remainder of the season. But I think it's a great opportunity for Christopher Bell. I think it's going to be good for the team. They'll be able to evaluate the equipment, see where things are currently at the moment for the team and the program. I hope Bell can do a really good job. Again, I expect Bell to be a pretty big factor for the overall win in victory with the Hallmark Fzen Racing organization. I think that truck is going to have some really solid pace and really, really strong speed, and I think Bell will do a pretty good job behind the wheel. We'll see who else is behind the wheel in the coming weeks, but good to see Christopher Bell get the chance and opportunity to join up with the Hallmark Fzen Racing team at Watkins Glen coming up here this week on Friday afternoon. Look to see what Bell can do coming up here really, really soon. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dean Thompson and Corey Day. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race from Iowa Speedway, you probably saw the incident between Dean Thompson and Corey Day. So I believe it was around 100 laps ago in the event. Corey Day got really loose under Dean Thompson. Basically was battling around for a 15th to 20 position, kind of running around that 10 to 15 range a lot of the day. And Dean Thompson also was having a pretty solid day in the race as well. I believe it was going into turn number 3 on one of the late race restarts. Corey Day, or start of stage 3, I should say, Corey Day got a little bit loose under Dean Thompson and got him up the racetrack. And unfortunately, Dean Thompson ended up spinning out, getting a little damage on his car, same with Corey Day. And unfortunately for Dean Thompson, he had a right rear tire that was unfortunately flat, and he came down pit road because of it and went multiple laps down. After the race had concluded, Dean Thompson went up to confront Corey Day, and you could tell Dean Thompson was very frustrated with Corey Day about what happened on the racetrack, and there was a fight that took place. Security was right there to kind of break up just in case things got really aggressive, and things escalated very, very quickly. Now, looking at the incident itself, it wasn't intentional. Corey Day was just trying to make a really aggressive move. He kind of just sent it in the corner right there. And that's something that I think he is going to learn over time. It's no doubt in my mind that he made a mistake. I think there's definitely, you can have seen throughout this year, that he has shown some improvement as a race car driver. I know he made that mistake right there, and that was not the best look for Corey Day, but I think he also handled himself in this situation pretty well, not really scolding Dean Thompson for it, because he did screw Dean Thompson's really good run going up, and especially with the speed of the 26 car, has shown a little bit more in recent weeks. I can understand Dean Thompson's frustration because Dean wants to do really good in this car. He's got a really good car that he's in currently at the moment right now. And if I was in a good car and had a good chance and opportunity to be in competitive equipment, I certainly would want to do the best I can behind the wheel, and not getting good finishes can unfortunately affect my career, even though I'm probably not going anywhere considering I have sponsorship and funding behind me. But for Corey Day, he's still got a lot of learning to do, and he's still got some growing to do as a driver in the sport. But I do expect that Corey Day is going to continue to improve as a driver over the next year or so. We'll talk about, again, him maybe being full-time in the Xfinity Series next year in just a little bit. But I think Corey Day is a pretty good driver. I think he'll get better. He's shown some improvement this year and this season as well. I think there's some good things that are on the horizon. He just made a simple mistake. It is what it is at this point. I feel for Dean Thompson, though, and I completely understand the frustration, but at the same time, I don't think it was intentional, the move that he made. Just got a little bit aggressive and made a little bit of an over-aggressive move on his part, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilch. Now, we have another Connor Zilch story to talk about here in just a short little bit. But Bob Pockets, of course, was interviewing Connor Zilch after the Xfinity Series race concluded, where he finished 4th, scored his 10th top 5 finish in a row. And according to what Bob notes in this, he knows that Connor Zilch could be driving in the Truck Series event on Friday afternoon. As he notes, it sounds like he may be driving a Hendrick Motorsports truck at Watkins Glen. Now, Connor Zilch, of course, is looking to do the triple. He, of course, is going to be running the NASCAR Cup Series race at Watkins Glen as well in the number 87 car for Trackhouse Racing, making his second road course start of his career. Of course, he ran a Circuit of the Americas earlier this year where he showed some really good pace and speed, but unfortunately got into his teammate Daniel Suarez, who we all know will not be returning to the Trackhouse Racing team and organization in 2026. Could be going to Junior Motorsports. We're not sure at this point. But for Connor Zilch, this would be a solid opportunity. He would most likely behind the wheel of the number 44 truck, the same ride, or maybe the 41 perhaps, considering the 44 truck has shown some good pace and speed at times this year. We've seen it with other drivers. Ross Chastain did have a decent run at IRP in that truck. Bailey Curry's had some really good runs, and Ross Chastain has had some race-winning pace and race-winning speed behind the wheel. Now, obviously, Nice Motorsports is not as strong as, let's say, Tricon Garage, for example, or Spire Motorsports at times, but I think that Connor Zilch could absolutely be a factor for the win, especially with how good of a road course racer he is and can take equipment that isn't as strong and run very good. And I think that he is in a very good position, will have a really good chance and a strong opportunity to be super, super fast and super, super competitive at Watkins Glen. And you never know, he may have a chance to sweep the weekend because I think he's absolutely the favorite to win the Xfinity Series race, despite the fact that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be in that event. I think he's going to be really strong and super, super competitive. But I expect that Connor Zilch is going to be very, very strong in this event with Nice Motorsports. And we'll see when that official announcement does come out if that is going to be truly happening or not. But I do expect that he is going to be good. I think the pace and speed will be there for Connor Zulch, and I think Nice is going to do the best they can to try to bring the best equipment they can for Connor. I expect him to be strong, and I think he'll be solid and pretty fast in the Nice Motorsports equipment in the Craftsman Truck Series race. Excited to see what he can do coming up here very, very soon with that organization and that team as well. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Austin Cindric. As it was reported, I believe, on Thursday night going into Friday, that according to Speed Cafe, that Austin Cindric may be involved, maybe doing a supercar event here very soon. As it was reported by Speed Cafe and Supercars.com, that the Adelaide Grand Final could feature a wild card after all, with Austin Cindric linked to an outing with Tickford Racing. Now, Tickford Racing, for those who don't know, that don't follow the supercar world, I believe they are the factory team in Ford in supercars currently at the moment. And I believe that Erebus Racing or another team like AAA Engineering might be switching over to Ford going into 2026 at this point. And Austin Cindric has been linked. We all know, of course, Kyle Larson was originally linked to be driving for one of the top Chevrolet teams in this series for outing at Adelaide, but he turned that down at the last minute after an unfortunate blunder at this year's Indianapolis 500 and a bad run at the Coca-Cola 600 as well. Austin Cindric, I believe, does have some prior supercar experience, if I'm not mistaken. And Austin Cindric, say what you want to say, I know he's not been as good on the NASCAR side when it comes to road course racing, but when it comes to racing in other series and road course racing, he's been pretty good. I mean, look at his Xfinity Series numbers not too long ago. He was really good at road course racing. Granted, he didn't win a lot of road course races when he had guys like Ty Gibbs and AJ Allmendinger showing up and running the events, but I think that Austin Cindric could absolutely be a pretty big factor and could have a solid chance and opportunity to be very, very good in this event. But you're going to have to worry about guys like Brody Kosecki, like Brock Feeney, like Will Brown, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit. You're going to have to worry about some of those guys that are going to be really, really strong and who will have a great chance and opportunity, like Chaz Mostert, for example, who I expect to be major contenders and really, really good as well. So I'm excited to see what Cindric can do, though, and I think NASCAR representation is so important for motorsports across the board and across the whole as well. And I think that Cindric will have a very good chance and opportunity to show what he's capable of. I think he's going to be solid. I think he'll show some solid pace and speed for sure. We'll see how he does, but a pretty cool opportunity and pretty awesome chance to see him get the chance and opportunity to race in Adelaide potentially and race in the supercar event. We'll see how he can do, and we'll see if he can perform very, very well in that event, because I think he's got talent, and I think he's shown some pretty good capabilities as a race car driver in motorsports overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brent Cruz. As it was announced on Friday afternoon, shockingly, that Brent Cruz has formed a new truck series team called Brent Cruz Motorsports. He and his dad are going to be running the operation, and they'll be making their Truck Series debut this weekend at Watkins Glen, as Brent Cruz will drive the number 70 for Brent Cruz Motorsports this weekend. Now, this team has not announced their official schedule throughout the remainder of the year, but he's not going to have help from some people that we originally thought. There was a public report out there that Connor Zilch, Jack Baldwin, and Jesse Love were involved with this team in some way, shape, or form. They did confirm, and it was a misunderstanding. It seems like maybe Chevrolet got involved in that front as well. They're going to be cheering for Brent Cruz. They're really, really good friends, but they're not going to be there to be part of the team and organization as ambassadors, considering all three of those drivers have ties to other manufacturers, and this team is going to be a Toyota team. Now, Nitro Motorsports, people part of the Nitro Motorsports organization for the TA2 series, are also going to be involved with this team and program as well, and will be helping out in some way, shape, or form with Brent Cruz. Brent Cruz, also noted by Seth Egger, he will be the youngest Truck Series owner in the history of the series at just 17 years old. In fact, I think he's going to be one of the youngest owners in the top three series all across the board. I am very high on Brent Cruz. He is a very talented race car driver. He's also expected, from what I understand, to make starts with Tricon Garage throughout the remainder of the season. Also will make some ARCA starts with Joe Gibbs Racing as well. but he sold off a lot of his stuff, I think some of his go-kart equipment, to form this team and get this rolling. And I gotta say, this is going to be a really great opportunity for Brent to form his own team and organization. I think when you look at top prospects in NASCAR currently at the moment, you look at guys like Connor Zilch and you look at guys like Corey Heim, who have been dominating their ranks. But I think of the next guys who are coming up through the ranks currently at the moment. And one of those guys is Brent Cruz. And to see that he is forming his own NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team with help from Nitro and help from Toyota is a really, really huge opportunity. And I expect, like I said, to see Brent Cruz show some good speed because Brent Cruz, like Connor Zilch, is a fantastic road course racer. The guy has once raced in TA2. He's the youngest TA2 champion in the history of that series. And we saw how good he was at Lime Rock and how good he's been at other road courses as well over the years. So I expect him to show some really strong pace and speed for sure with this truck. Again, I don't think this truck will be competing for the overall win. I expect Corey Heim, Kyle Busch, and Connor Zilch to probably be the favorites in this race. And if SVG shows up, he may be really, really good. But I expect that Brent Cruz is going to be really good. I think he's going to be someone to watch out for in this event. And throughout the remainder of the races that he does end up entering, I'm excited to see what he can do in these races for sure. And it's still nonetheless really exciting and pretty cool to see overall that Brent Cruz has owned his own NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team. I think that's some pretty cool stuff. I love seeing new guys come into the block and show some things that we haven't seen before in the past. Pretty cool to see Brent Cruz get the chance and opportunity to now form his own Truck Series team. We'll see if he can show the pace and speed, but I think he's going to be solid, and I think he'll be definitely pretty good in the events coming up with his own organization coming very, very soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilch once again. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race in this past weekend at Iowa Speedway, you saw Connor Zilch have a very adventurous day throughout the event. And there were definitely some people talking on social media about it and definitely some things that happened during the event. So let's go back to the beginning of this race. So Connor Zilch had a really, really fast car, starting in 4th position, but by lap 2 of the event, he was already in the race lead and would dominate early and win stage number 1. Unfortunately for Connor Zilch, his pit crew would have a complete blunder and they would have a terrible pit stop, and Connor would have to actually come back down pit road to tighten the wheel on the car because they did not tighten all the lug nuts on the car and they had loose lug nuts and had to change the tire. He would basically get frustrated on the radio and would struggle throughout the middle portion of this race. And Connor Zilch was so frustrated about the dirty air in front of him and behind him that he went on a rant and called out Parker Retzlaff, which then there was a reply on Twitter, which Connor said, "No, that was me being frustrated. You're an awesome driver." So I don't think anyone should have taken completely what Connor Zilch was saying seriously, and that was a heat of a moment thing right there at that point. Then on one of the late race restarts, Connor had charged his way back up to around 3rd or 4th position. He had fresher tires around some guys like Ross Chastain and Justin Allgaier, Brandon Jones, and he made a move to the inside on one of the late restarts. And unfortunately got into Justin Allgaier, spinning basically Allgaier out with a little bit of damage, and Chastain got collected in the incident as well. Connor Zilch, we all have to remember this. Yes, he has made some aggressive mistakes. I don't think there's any question about that Connor Zilch did make some mistakes during the race at Iowa. But to me, when I look at the situation of what happened there, it's still a guy who's a rookie. Yes, Connor Zilch has been super, super impressive this season, and he's had 4 wins in the last 6 or 7 races. And, of course, he's had 10 consecutive top 5 finishes because even with all the chaos he was involved in, he still finished inside the top 5 of the event. You can tell that Connor Zilch is a really good driver, but he's still a rookie at this point. And I think he'll admit it at this point that he is still learning as a race car driver currently at the moment. A lot of young guys are still learning how to get up the wheel. Like we talk about Corey Day, for example. Corey Day, despite the fact he showed a lot of promise and a lot of potential, he definitely made some mistakes throughout the events he's been involved in over the last few months, I should say. Though I think he has shown a lot of improvement, has shown a lot more speed. But I think that there are going to be some days where you're not going to be absolutely perfect. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're going to make those mistakes. You're going to learn from those mistakes. And I think as Connor matures, because I think Connor has a lot of that maturity currently at the moment, he's only going to grow as a driver because I think you also want to learn in that dirty air because dirty air is going to be a big factor when you get to the Cup Series more than likely next year. And I do expect that Zilch will continue. He's probably going to have some frustrations next year, but I think if there's anyone that can handle that frustration, it is certainly Connor Zilch. So he apologized for the incident. It is what it is. That's all he can do at this point. Now the big focus is try to go out there and win the Xfinity race at Watkins Glen. get a 6th Xfinity Series win of the season, continue to be as strong as he's been, looks to get it done. We'll see what it can do in the upcoming race, but nonetheless, I saw the frustration. We haven't really seen Connor be frustrated on the radio before like this, and I understand the frustration, though, because he was in a really good position to pick up the win, and unfortunately didn't get the chance to fully close out the deal. Nonetheless, a really, really good run for Connor. Just had some things happen on the track. It is what it is, and now if you're Connor, you move forward and try to go win some more events going forward into the future. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Ovar. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race at Iowa Speedway, you saw a lot of chaos that took place throughout the day and throughout the event, especially in the middle portion of the race. We all know, of course, that William Byron was able to go out there and pick up the win and pick up the victory. But in the middle portion of the race, there was some contact that took place between Zane Smith. Going into turn number 1, I believe with around 100 laps to go in the race, Carson Ovar was behind Zane Smith on the restart and would just basically get up into Zane Smith and unfortunately end up spinning him out. Zane Smith would unfortunately end up back into the outside wall, would have the back of the car destroyed. His day would be over, and there was a lot of frustration on the radio for the incident that took place. But Zane Smith was more frustrated at the pit crew for not basically knowing how to build the strategy and the restarts and the spotters as well. Then he was really mad at Carson Ovar. Well, it looked like Ryan Burgundy was the one who was more upset with Carson Ovar than he was. Because remember, last year Zane Smith and Carson Ovar were teammates. But Ryan Burgundy, you could tell, was not very happy about it. And there was a confrontation between both those guys as the media. And while the media was interviewing Carson Ovar after the race, where Carson still got a really good finish at the end of the day, Ryan Burgundy was not very happy. And he said something that probably shouldn't be said by any individual. Not the smartest thing that he probably could have done in that situation. And he says something where I think Steven's son put that. He didn't show the full clip because they probably were told to cut the camera at that point. Probably PR people were telling them cut the camera until the incident happened. And apparently, according to what Carson Ovar said as well, apparently someone reared him down. I think Zane was trying to intentionally wreck him during the green flag, and he failed at doing that. Meanwhile, you had Shane Van Gisbergen, who called Carson Ovar a wanker on the radio, and he had a lot of people that were not happy with Carson Ovar. Carson Ovar, basically after the race, went on social media, and he basically, I think, was playing a Drake song, if I'm not mistaken. I said, I don't give an F, I think, something like that, and basically said, now we move forward, which I gotta respect Carson Ovar for not giving a crap in these situations. That being said, though, Carson Ovar has earned a big reputation as a young driver for being way too over-aggressive in certain situations and causing incidents and people to get mad and upset. But Carson has said it in the past as well. I'm not going to change a driver and am to please a lot of people. And you know what? I got to respect that in some way, shape, or form, that Carson doesn't really care and wants to focus on trying to get the best finishes he can. And to be fair, he's had a really good runs as of late, but hasn't also had the best finishes because I think some of that may be karma. I don't know at this point for Carson Ovar, but in this case and situation, I completely understand why the team was upset with him, right? The 38 team, because it's back-to-back weeks that 38 car has been taken out in no wrongdoing in those cases. I think Zane still got a decent finish, but at the same time, Carson's getting good finishes, but he's gotten a lot of people throughout this year. You think about Stenhouse, who he's gotten upset with. You think about Ryan Blaney, who's been frustrated with him at points. Kyle Busch, who was not happy with him on the radio early in the race at Atlanta, and still being frustrated about past incidents that had taken place on the racetrack. He's got a reputation, and a reputation that a lot of people don't really like from Carson Ovar, and many would love to see him kind of clean up at this point. Nonetheless, I do respect, though, the commitment to not hold back in some ways, and I do respect that a little bit from Carson Ovar, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Fishing. Now, if you watch a NASCAR Xfinity Series race from Iowa Speedway, you saw the really bad and dumb officiating call from Racing Control throughout the day. And there were multiple times throughout the race where NASCAR officiating and the race control was really terrible throughout the day. There was an incident with Mason Massey with around 100 laps to go in the event where I believe he got into the outside wall. And instead of basically throwing the caution for Mason Massey, they don't go ahead and throw the caution. Meanwhile, I mentioned the Corey Day incident. Yeah, Corey Day basically spun instantly, and within a second or so, they threw the yellow. But the most egregious thing that happened was when there was oil on the racetrack. So after the incident with Justin Allgaier, Connor Zulch, and Ross Chastain, they got back going in the race, and Corey Day kind of checked up a little bit in front of Matt DiBenedetto, and Matt DiBenedetto ran into the back of Corey Day. And you can clearly see there's a lot of smoke coming out of the car, the front is destroyed, and there is clearly oil that is going on the racetrack. In NASCAR, they wait 10 seconds. They wait 15 seconds. They wait a full lap until going into turn number 1. Jesse Love washes up the racetrack. Chastain washes up the racetrack. Sam Mayer is able to get the race lead. And Brandon Jones ends up spinning out and bringing up the caution. I was definitely, when I saw that incident, I was definitely really mad and really frustrated because it's not the first time even this year, even this month for that matter, where we have seen a officiating controversy. Go back to earlier this year with the Cody Ware crash. They said that's the hardest hit they have seen, and they basically had a terrible explanation on that front. I really don't know what their explanation is going to be in this case, in this situation, because to me, this is an absolutely ridiculous that they basically kept the green for a lap. There is no reason in any way, shape, or form when you can clearly see a car is smoking, when you can clearly see a car is laying oil on the racetrack, you're telling me that you could not throw the caution sooner? That is absolutely ridiculous because to me that should have been a caution really quickly. And then later in the race, you have a car that spins pretty quickly like Garrett Smithley, who spins at the bottom of the racetrack, and Sam Mayer was going to win the race no matter what. But they throw the caution instantly for Garrett Smithley. You're telling me that you couldn't throw the caution sooner for oil that's clearly on the racetrack that ruins guys' days and opportunities and chances to pick up wins, but you're telling me you basically waited. I don't understand what we're doing here as a sanctioning body. Like, that was clear as day. There was clearly oil on the racetrack, and you couldn't throw the caution sooner. I just don't understand that. That's inexcusable and uncalled for NASCAR, and they need to be better in these situations. And race control, I said it before and I'll say it again, there needs to be a big overhaul that's happening with officiating because what happened here was uncalled for. It could have been worse than it was. Luckily, not a lot of other cars got collected in the incident because that could have been way worse than it was. And like I said already, officiating needs to get better, and there needs to be a massive overhaul when it comes to officiating into the not-so-distant future, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Iowa Speedway. Now, it is still unknown currently at the moment if Iowa Speedway is going to be on the NASCAR schedule for 2026. And according to the NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia account, they're also saying the same thing. They haven't heard officially if they're going to be back at Iowa Speedway or not for the 2026 NASCAR season. There's some skepticism around it from some people currently at the moment and some unknowns at this time. Now, it is noted that Jordan Bianchi did say on the teardown earlier tonight, along with the fact there's going to be a silly season article dropping later this week, which we'll probably react to, but he also does say that it's very likely that Iowa Speedway will probably be back on the NASCAR schedule once again for 2026 and beyond as well. Now, look, I think Iowa Speedway is a really, really good racetrack, and it's a shame to see how things went for IndyCar at the racetrack. But I really hope it is true that Iowa Speedway is going to be back on the schedule. I do get that the racing from today was not very, very good. It was not the best racing that we have seen at the track, but that is more of a next-gen car issue than anything else. And I get that it was very difficult to pass in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at times, but the difference between the Xfinity car and the Cup car, you can clearly see it. You have more opportunities and you have more chances and better opportunities to make passes and make moves to get up front. The problem is with the next-gen car, and we've seen that with a lot of the racing at the shorter ovals and even some of the bigger ovals at times as well, is that dirty air is so prevalent with this car that it's so almost nearly impossible to make the moves and the passes that you really, really want to. And to me, that's really, really irritating and really frustrating because races like Iowa are becoming unwatchable. I thought the race last year in particular was certainly way better than what we saw tonight. And it was definitely frustrating as a fan who covers the sport on a day-by-day basis because you want to see the best racing out there. You don't want to see all these gimmicks. You don't want to see all the stage racing. You don't want to see all that. And I think the racing product just hasn't been the best at short tracks in 4 years. We've had this next-gen car for 4 years that is making the short track races not as fun to watch. And again, that's what's really disappointing is I think the racing has been phenomenal at tracks like this. If we had the old car, the Gen 6, for the short tracks, the racing would be better there. So that's what's been so frustrating is we know we can get really good racing, but we're not getting the racing that I think the fans truly deserve at this point. I really hope down the road we can get the racing to be a little bit better in the future, but as of now, it's unknown how the racing is going to be here in the future right now, but I really hope Iowa sticks on the schedule. Again, the schedule is expected to be released here really soon. I'll be very intrigued to see what else gets announced for the 2026 schedule here into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim. As it was announced on Friday that Corey Heim will be making another start in the NASCAR Cup Series here in a couple weeks. As it was announced that Robinhood will sponsor him and he'll drive the number 67 for 2311 Racing at Richmond. Booty Barker is expected to be the crew chief, who's working as a higher-up currently at the moment for 2311 Racing. He will be the crew chief for Corey Heim in this event as well. Corey Heim will be attempting to make his third NASCAR Cup Series start of 2025. He's made 2 official starts so far this year. Those, of course, coming at Kansas, where he finished inside the top 15, the highest finishing 2311 racing car, and he finished and crashed out of the event at National Super Speedway after showing some really good pace and speed, but unfortunately got into an incident with Brad Keselowski in the middle portion of the race. He attempted to qualify for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Chicago, and we all thought he'd be the fastest of the open cars. Instead, he was slowest of the open cars and failed to make the event. So he'll be looking to make his third start of 2025. I have been very, very high on Corey Heim. I think when you look at the top prospects in the lower series coming up currently at the moment, I think Corey Heim is definitely up there as one of the top prospects currently at the moment right now. We've seen it with how good he's been in the Craftsman Truck Series this year. I think he's got like 16 or 17 career Truck Series wins, including 5 so far this season, and has been extremely dominant in this series, leading over 1,000 laps so far this year, and is on track to break records on a lot of different categories: lap sled, top 5s, top 10s, consistency, finishing up front. He has been so good in the Truck Series this year, and when you hear a lot of people talk about Corey Heim, many people, including myself, say that Corey Heim absolutely should be moving up to the NASCAR Cup Series currently at the moment. But it's a shame to see that money and sponsorship really plays a role. And Booty Barker absolutely agrees as well. He says that if Corey Heim was in the Cup Series full-time currently at the moment right now, he believes that Corey Heim would be contending for wins and maybe contending for a championship. And while I don't know if Corey Heim would instantly be contending for a championship, I think there would be times if he got an opportunity and a chance to move up, I really think that he would absolutely be ready to make that jump up and be super fast and super successful very quick and really, really steadily. I think that he would absolutely be ready to make that jump up if that was the case, because I think he's ready to make the jump up right now. And it frustrates me so much with someone that is so good right now that he can't make the jump up. Now, what are my expectations for Corey in this event? I expect Corey to be good because both Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace have been really good at Richmond the last year or so. Bubba had a top 5 car going in the spring race, and I believe finished in the top 5 in the fall race as well, the chaotic event that happened at Richmond last year. So I do expect that Heim is going to be very, very good for sure. I think 2311 Racing is going to bring a car that will bring some good pace and really strong speed for him. I expect him to be good. I think a top 20 should be the goal right now, but I think he even can do better than that, and I think he could have a really fantastic and a very, very good run with 2311 Racing at Richmond in a couple weeks from now. We'll see how he does next weekend at Richmond. We'll see if he can have a really good car coming up here really soon at the track. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Will Brown. Now, I did videos covering the story a couple days ago on the channel, but it was reported by jski.com and Speed Cafe as well that Will Brown is expected to make another start in NASCAR coming up here really soon. As reported by the account, Will Brown is expected to drive the number 11 for Colin Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Portland Raceway at the end of the month, while the Cup Series and the Truck Series will be racing at Darlington during Southern 500 weekend. Will Brown so far this year has made one start in the NASCAR Cup Series. He made the start in the number 13 car for Colleague Racing. Had a multi-year race deal scheduled for this year with Rich Schultz Racing. Unfortunately, that fell through, and they went to the subsidiarity role with Colleague Racing to get that opportunity and qualified decently, but unfortunately for Will Brown, got caught up in an incident and crash and never got that chance and opportunity to go out there and contend for that win, despite the fact I think he would have been definitely a contender for a top 5 and top 10. If this does truly end up happening, I expect Will Brown to be a contender for the win. He is looking to do what Shane Van Gisbergen did. We all know Shane Van Gisbergen is absolutely amazing and very, very good at road courses. He contends very, very well at those types of tracks, and I think Will Brown is no exception to that. He was really good at Sonoma last year in the Cup Series before unfortunately having the unfortunate and untimely electrical gremlins and getting caught up in a couple incidents along with Cam Waters as well. We have been seeing a massive supercar movement over the course of the last year or so. Of course, a lot of that transpires to how good Shane Van Gisbergen has been on road courses in the last year or so. Shane Van Gisbergen's picked up like 7 or 8 career road course wins across the board, including 4 Xfinity Series wins and 4 career Cup Series wins at this point. And I expect Will Brown to be good because we all saw how good Jack Perkins was when he ran the Xfinity Series race with Joe Gibbs Racing for getting caught up in turn by Sammy Smith in that event, which I do expect Jack Perkins to be a major, major factor. But I think of people like Cam Waters. There was even rumors and speculation that Brock Feeney was going to make a start with this team and organization, and unfortunately, it seems like that deal has fallen through. But I think for Will Brown, this is going to be an amazing opportunity for him because I think Will Brown, again, will be pretty solid. And I definitely think he'll be pretty competitive for sure with the speed that I do think that car is going to bring. Because Colleague Racing has some decent speed at Iowa, especially with Carson Ovar, who finished inside the top 10 in both the Cup and Xfinity Series events. And I really do believe that he will have a pretty good car for that event as well. Because Colleague Racing's road course program, say what you want to say, they may not be as strong on the other types of tracks. But I expect Will Brown will have a pretty solid and definitely a pretty good car for sure in that event. So we'll see how Will Brown can end up doing in the event when it gets officially announced and confirmed. But I do expect an announcement coming very soon on that front. And I love seeing all the road course guys come out. I think it'll be solid. I think it'll show some pretty good speed. Excited to see what Will Brown can do in the NASCAR Xfinity Series event when it does officially get announced. They'll be racing at the event at Portland coming up here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're doing a little bit of a silly season update. Now, over the last couple days, the NASCAR Nostalgia account has been putting out some very interesting silly season information that's been being revealed over the course of the last couple days. First, let's begin by talking about Corey Day. He reports that he expects that Corey Day will likely be full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Hendrick Motorsports in 2026. Now, throughout the majority of the 2025 Xfinity Series season, we have seen the number 17 car run, and they've been adding more and more races throughout 2025. This is the most we have seen the 17 car on the racetrack, and a majority of those starts have, of course, been with the number 17 for Corey Day. Corey Day, of course, is a development driver for Hendrick Motorsports currently at the moment and has made a lot of starts in the Craftsman Truck Series, made a few starts in ARCA so far with Spire Motorsports, same with the Truck Series side as well, but the majority of his development has been in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with the number 17 team. And many people like myself have been kind of thinking the same thing, that more than likely Corey Day is going to be full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. They've been trying to get him prepared a lot more quickly, and they're trying to get him up to speed as quick as possible. Now, what are the expectations if Corey Day does end up going full-time next year in Xfinity competition? Well, realistically, I think Corey Day is going to have some struggles. But I do think as the year goes on, I think if he is truly full-time, I do think that he'll be very fast and super, super competitive by the end of the year. I think he's shown that at points in both series, in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series so far this year. Think about Nashville, where he got spun out at one point, and he still recovered to finish inside the top 15, 11th place, and nearly scored himself a top 10 finish. He had really good speed at Iowa at times, finished inside the top 15 there. And a race like Sonoma, for example, he was pretty fast for a guy that doesn't have a lot of road course experience like Kyle Larson didn't have for many years. And he did a very, very good job. And there's a lot of hype around this guy, right? Because he, of course, is Kyle Larson's prodigy. When you are under the wing of Kyle Larson and Kyle Larson is super high on you, they're going to be really high expectations as they see how good Kyle Larson's been when it comes to dirt and NASCAR side of things, how good he was on the dirt side of things for coming over to NASCAR and how he did. And I think Corey Day does have that potential to be that good. But there's also been a lot of those struggles. We also got to remember one thing as well. Corey Day is only 19 years old, isn't even 20 currently at the moment. And I've seen a lot of people doing this. A lot of people have been laying Corey Day a bus. And I know a lot of people have been really hard on him because when you are under the wing of Kyle Larson and you're driving for the best team in NASCAR across motorsports ever, you're going to have really high expectations to do very, very well. We also got to remember, he's driving in the same car where Cup guys have done exceptional in. You think about Kyle Larson, who's already got multiple wins in the number 17 car. You think about William Byron, who picked up a win earlier this year at Charlotte Motor Speedway. You think about how good Chase Elliott was in this car at Pocono, a race they added originally on that was not originally on their schedule. And you think about how good Alex Bowman's been in the one or two races he's been behind the wheel of the number 17 car. You're going to have your expectations are going to be that high to go out there and contend when you're basically going to be in the same car the multiple Cup guys have running. But let's be real, the Cup guys should instantly be doing as better than the young rookie, who I think will be really, really good next year if he is truly full-time. If he realistically is full-time next year, I think the ultimate goal is to score as many top 10s as possible and maybe try to get that first win. But I think there's a good chance maybe before the end of this year, if he continues to get better, he could get a win in the lower series, including the Craftsman Truck Series, where he did finish in second position. So I think he'll be pretty solid and pretty competitive if he truly is full-time next year. I think he'll be pretty good for sure. But the other big thing, as many expected, and Emmerman mentioned this during the Xfinity race that someone brought up as well. I think Michael Adams on Twitter mentioned this, but he had heard that Connor Zilch more than likely will be full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series next year. I think at this point, this is a worst-kept secret. Connor Zilch, we all know more than likely will be full-time. We all know Daniel Suarez will not be back in the 99 car next year. It's unknown if the number will switch if Connor Zilch is truly in the Cup Series next year, but there's a chance it could switch to the 87, but there's also a chance the 99, which was the original number for Trackhouse Racing, could end up sticking around. Look, Connor Zulch, I think, is ready to make that jump. I get that he didn't have the best run at Iowa Speedway, despite the fact he still finished 4th. But remember, he's had 10 consecutive top 5 finishes in a row. No one else in Xfinity is putting up those numbers, including Justin Allgaier. He's had 4 or 5 wins in Xfinity competition this year, and only 2 of those have been on road courses this year. Majority of those have come on ovals, including Indianapolis, a very tough track to win at. I think Connor's going to be ready to make that jump. And I think very similar to Corey Day, who, like I said, will probably be full-time in Xfinity next year, Connor's probably going to have some difficulties adjusting to the car. But because he even said this last week in Indy, he said that basically it's going to take time for me to adjust, and my best opportunity is going to be to win on road courses because we've seen it with the Trackhouse Racing cars. Those cars are not as strong as they were in 2022. They haven't been as strong as they were in the first year. They expanded to a multi-car operation. And other teams have caught up in the last time. I mean, they've complained a little bit about the lack of speed at points, even though their road course program has been their strength, especially since Shea Van Gisbergen has been their guy to win on a lot of road course races so far this year. I think Connor's going to be really good next year. I expect Red Bull to probably step up a lot in the sponsorship realm going into next season, and I don't think it'll be long before we get the official confirmation of Connor Zilch being full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think he's ready to make that jump up. I think he's shown a lot of promise at this point, and I think he'll be very, very good next year. I think more than likely Daniel Suarez will come in and take over the junior motorsports car going into next year. And I think Carson Quaffel, despite the fact there's some rumors and speculation that he could leave to go to potentially Penske next year as a development guy, there is a chance he could still stay with junior motorsports if Penske doesn't open up their Xfinity program. There's still a lot of talk that Spire is going to only have an Xfinity Series team going into next year with the rumors about some other stuff. We all know about the Rick Ware legacy lawsuit, which we're going to talk about here just a little bit. But I think there's some big movement happening. The Truck Series, Call It Racing, maybe going Truck Series racing next year with a Dodge and Ram program. There's some speculation around that. Call, of course, still could have their Xfinity program going into next year, some have noted. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in regards to that going into next season. But I think there's some big things happening that will be in the lower series here very, very soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Legacy Motor Club and the Haas factory team. As it was reported by the NASCAR Rumor Nostalgia account on Friday early afternoon, they heard a very shocking and wild rumor that's been growing over the last couple weeks. As there has been rumors that Legacy Motor Club could either buy or merge with the Haas factory team going into the 2026 season. This would be a backup plan in case the lawsuit goes sideways for Legacy Motor Club. Now, if you don't know, Legacy Motor Club is currently in a lawsuit with Rick Ware Racing, but not just Rick Ware Racing, but the new potential owner of the team, that being TJ Pusher. TJ Pusher had tried to broker a deal for Legacy Motor Club to become a 3-car team for the 2026 season with Rick Ware Racing. That deal was expected to go through. However, Rick Ware Racing is basically backed out of the deal because they were going to be paying around $100 million or $45 million, something like that, for that charter going into next year. Legacy wanted the money. Well, Rick Ware Racing claimed, and Rick Ware claimed this as well, that in the original documents, in the original contract had stated that that was for 2027 and not 2026, and that was what was written originally in the document. Legacy Motor Club has come back and said, no, you had the deal signed for 2026, and you wanted to change the date to 2027, so you guys don't have to back out of the deal, because obviously RFK Racing, they're part of this whole thing as well, too, with that third charter at the moment, because the lease agreement, which is the number 27 charter, which again is being leased over to RFK, that charter will go back to Rick Ware Racing going into next year, or the TJ Pusher team next year, and that other charter that Cody Ware has right now will go over to RFK Racing going into next season. Then things changed because about a month or so ago, TJ Pusher was announced to be becoming an owner of Rick Ware Racing, changing the team name among other things, but Rick Ware and Cody Ware are still going to be part of the team. It turns out they were going to be looking to sell the team for around $100+ million. Well, the judge, in this case, got wind of it and basically said, and was told TJ Pusher and Rick Ware Racing, hey, you can't be doing this at this point, because if you try to do this, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. You got TJ Pusher, who's trying to purchase the team. And it was announced a couple days ago that Legacy Motor Club has been granted their 10-day temporary restraining order, where basically they cannot sell the charter or sell the team overall at this point. Now, let's say if Legacy Motor Club does not win the lawsuit and somehow Rick Ware gets to keep their lawsuit, that's where the rumor comes in with the Haas factory team. Now, this would have major significance if the Haas factory team does end up going to Toyota, but obviously Gene Haas does, and the Haas F1 team do have major association with Toyota, so that move would make a little bit of sense at this point. When I had heard this rumor, I was completely shocked because I did not think that Gene Haas or the people over there at the Haas factory team would even be thinking about at this point of switching over to Toyota, but it would make sense with the Haas team in Formula One currently at the moment with the major Toyota and the Toyota Gazoo Racing backing at this point. Now, how would this work? Well, if they would get their third charter, they would probably have Cole Custer driving for that third car. It would be a multi-ownership thing. And that would also mean the Xfinity Series program would be affected in a really, really big way. Not just for the Haas Factory 4 team, but RSS Racing, AM Racing, and a couple other teams are supplied by the Haas Factory team because the Haas Factory team is the main 4 team currently at the moment in Xfinity, which they just picked up the win with Sam Mayer. This would mean that RSS would have to go to another team. Now, obviously, that could lead to that rumor of Penske coming in and maybe Carson Ovar driving for them if they do bring their program back. That could lead to those rumors at this point. AM Racing, among other things, that could help that on that front. This also could have a big effect on Sam Mayer and Sheldon Creed with how tied they are now with Ford at this point. And both drivers could be looking for a ride going into next year if things don't end up working out. I expect Sam Mayer to probably stay in Xfinity. Sheldon Creed, not sure at this point if this rumor ends up coming true. But like I said, if this rumor ends up coming true in any way, shape, or form, and let's say the Haas factory team does go to Toyota and they become a 30-car team, that'd be really big for Jimmy because they would then potentially run a 4th part-time car, which Legacy would be able to do that. And Jesse Love, who is rumored to be potentially a candidate for that at this point, could also make select starts in that 4th car as well. And then let's say Gene Haas maybe backs out of the sport and maybe being in the sport in any way, shape, or form. This could lead to that potential possibility of them getting that 41, which, by the way, Petty many years ago had the 41 for many, many years. And I could absolutely see this being a major possibility at this point of something like that kind of going through and that sale end up happening. But again, this is only a backup plan and a contingency plan currently at the moment right now if let's just say Legacy does not in fact win their lawsuit at this point. But I think there's a chance they could win their lawsuit. I think it's very likely. And then this whole Haas factory team may not become a major thing in the factor. But this could absolutely shake up silly season in a major way, shape, or form if that happens. In the other rumor, because we all know that Legacy, there were people saying, oh, maybe Daniel Suarez goes over to this Legacy 3rd car because they do want to become a 3-car team. They're really wanting to give Jesse Love an opportunity to move up. I think Jesse Love is really, really good. I'm not sure if Jesse Love is fully ready for a cup ride at this point, but I think it'd be really cool if he got the chance and opportunity, let's say down the road for Jesse Love, to maybe in the near future get a full-time ride. So we'll see what happens in the future, but this is absolutely a wild rumor at this point, and I think it'd be kind of crazy if the Haas factory team, let's say, does end up selling their team to Legacy Motor Club. That would be big for the Jimmy Johnson's team. They've shown a lot of improvement this year, but I'm not sure if they're fully ready to make that jump to become 3 full-time cars. So we'll see what happens going into next year. We'll see what happens with the remainder of silly season on this front, but I think silly season for the top and even the lower series is going to be picking up very soon. We'll see what happens with Legacy Motor Club and that potential merger of the Haas factory team here very, very soon. So, that is going to today's Law NASCAR News and Motorsports News episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Notifications on so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. You think Legacy will actually buy the Haas factory team? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And how do you think Corey Day will do if he is full-time in the Xfinity Series next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Where if we have any major news that breaks later today, we'll discuss live on the channel. Tomorrow, we're going to have the intros for the Cup Series race at Watkins Glen. We're also going to have the Truck Series race picks as well. Then on Wednesday, we'll have the NASCAR news video and Xfinity picks. And then, of course, on Thursday, we'll have the Cup picks video for the Cup race at the Glen. And we'll also have the paint scheme video as well. Then Friday, we'll have the Truck Series race video, maybe the ARCA review as well, and a NASCAR news video as well. And then, of course, on Saturday, we'll have the Xfinity review. We'll have reactions to qualifying for the series. And then on Sunday, of course, we'll have reactions to the Cup race. We'll have reactions to the starting lineup as well, and then we'll have a news video dropping on Monday for heading to Richmond. We got content coming at people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bo Wallace, Ross Chastain, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, among other things like Carson Quaffle, Clay Varn, Dodge Ram, you name it, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ryan Prix, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.